Hello and welcome to another Teamo8 hand review session. Today we've got 8 hands that were sent in by one of our Teamo8 members to look at. All of them are from 18-seat turbo sit and goes, Omaha Hi low of course. So let's get right into it. The question was what to do with this hand here on the bubble. Let's have a look at the action leading up to us. So a fold, the only stack bigger than us limps. So what should we do with our aces here? We're a little bit weak on the low, but this limp is hard to interpret without knowing more about this guy's stats. But what I would say is that although sometimes it's a trapping play, it doesn't make much sense here. He's got the biggest stack. If he had a hand he wanted to play, he probably would have raised or jammed. So I'm in favour of jamming here. Calling would be the worst option. We really don't want to play a weak pair of aces out of position against two other people on the bubble. I can understand the ICM concern that we've got a really short stack. This chess beer, I think he's called there, is about to bust. Well, look, let's actually look at the sort of range that we think this guy down here would limp with. Now, given that he hasn't come in for a raise, it seems likely that the strongest he's going to be is some sort of ace-3 type hand, in which case, you know, we're well ahead. He's probably not going to call a raise. So if we just jam it here, he should fold most of the time. What does our player do? He does jam it. Yep, I'm really happy with that. Can't see a problem with that at all. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. All right, the next hand here, and the question was, is limping okay? Let's see what happens. Okay, someone limps under the gun with the biggest stack, and we limps behind. Yep, really don't have a problem with that at all. You could raise or you could limp. I don't mind limping with such a strong hand, especially with the 4 back up low. There's a lot of flops that we can make money out of in position, so happy with that limp. Now he asked about post-flop play. Well, we've flopped a very tricky board. We don't want to put a lot of chips in here. See what happens. Our player checks behind. I'm quite happy with that. Okay, now we've turned the second best hand with our aces full of deuces. And the short stack suddenly says he's got something. Oh, this is a tricky situation to overcall. Now, it's quite conceivable that our biggest stack here does have ace-3 and played the flop slowly. 4-5 doesn't seem really likely from the bigger stack. Maybe the shorter stack has 4-5 and he was hoping to get a check raise in, but I can't really see that either. So I don't mind a call here. Okay, we do call. All right. River, of course, is a bit of a scary card because now there's 2 bigger full houses out there. But we know one of these 2 players can't have aces up. So what happens? It checks. What's our player do? Check behind. Okay, I don't have a huge problem with check behind there either, given that there are a couple of hands now that can beat us. If we're in front, we're miles in front. If we're behind, we're miles behind. So, yep, don't have a problem with how that hand played out. Anyway, let's move along. Okay, here's the next hand, and the question was about how to play it post-flop. Let's see what happens. Okay, limps, that's okay. Limping or raising are both fine there. Although I don't mind a raise usually with a hand this strong. Now let's see what happens. Okay, we've flopped the nuts, or the temporary nuts, as we say in Omaha. Check, check. Now, I would just come out and bet the pot here. We don't want to let these straight and flush draws in for free. He does bet the pot. Okay, I'm really happy with that. Okay, we're being called. All right, that has brought up a straight card, but would our opponent have called with Queen Jack there, a pot-sized bet? It's possible, but apart from that, you know, oh, and he donks. Okay, that's a strange bet. That's a strange size bet. If our opponent is worried about us drawing, then that bet does nothing to stop us drawing, whether we've got a flush draw or a straight draw. So if he had the straight, if he'd played Queen Jack, and he's just made the nuts on the turn, he was going to bet. I mean, surely he would bet a lot more than that to defend his nuts. So his bet doesn't make sense. I'd be inclined to raise it, in fact. The stack sizes are such that we can't really raise fold here. Yeah, certainly wouldn't fold. What does our player do? I just called. Yeah, not a problem. I don't mind that. Or call or a raise, but I certainly wouldn't fold. Well, obviously, this plays itself out. He should jam, and he does. Yep, that's right there. This player's turn bet made no sense. So calling was okay. I wouldn't have minded a raise there. Like I said, if he'd made the straight on the turn, he probably would have bet a lot more than that to defend his hand. So a raise on the turn would have been okay too. Anyway, let's move right along. Okay, here we have the next one, and this question is his player okay against a short stack? Let's see what the action's like. And he jams. Okay, well, to answer a question like this, let's look at what a guy with 6 blinds, what would be in his calling range. We're obviously a long way off the money. There's still another table in play. So, yeah, let's look at his typical calling ranges that we might expect here. Now, with our opponent being relatively short stacked and getting a bit desperate, I'd expect him to call with any 2 wheel cards in his hand. And as you can see, our equity stacks up nicely against that. We scoop quite often, as well as having a big equity edge. So, yep, that's fine. And let's look at some other possibilities. Our opponent could call with what I've got here is a double suited hand would be in his calling range, with not necessarily with any smalls, and we shape up well against that. Also, any ace and a small card would be in his calling range, and we look good against that. So against all those possibilities, I think we're looking pretty good, and I'm happy with the jam there. Okay, let's move along. Okay, and the question our player asked here was how to play on the bubble position. Well, we're not on the bubble, we're too off the money, but we're getting close. Anyway, let's see what the action is like here. Okay, is a raise. What does our player do? Oh, he flats it. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of, as you've heard me say before, I'm not a big fan of playing weak aces out of position. We're double suited, that gives us a bit more equity, but we're extremely weak on the low. So in that case, I nearly always favour a jam. It just, especially when you start multi-tabling, when you're playing a lot of tables, you've got to take, sometimes you sacrifice a little bit of edge for simplifying your decisions. And with a double suited pair of aces here, I really would have preferred a jam rather than a call, because playing this post flop out of position is always going to be tricky. So there was no need to introduce more difficult decisions down the road. Instead, just jam it. Our opponent will probably fold. If he doesn't, we don't care. We've got aces. We're double suited. Our chance of being knocked out is quite low. So I would have gone for the jam instead. Anyway, let's move right along. Okay, here we are on the big blind, and the question is how to play this one post flop. So let's see what happens. Okay, is a call. Another call. Okay, so it's a pretty big pot here with 5 of us seeing the flop. Let's see what happens. Okay, now I can see why he's asking the question. So a flop top 2. We've got an awkward stack to pot ratio. Really, I think the only way to play this hand, well, obviously there are multiple ways, but the best way to play this hand, not only do we have the 2 pair, but we've got a straight draw to go with it. So, I'm just in favour of jamming it right in here. We'll deny odds to most possible calling hands. So yeah, I would go for a jam. What does our player do? Oh, he checks it. Okay, now another player is bet from the button. I would, now that I think with the stack size here, we've just got a call. And a player does make the call, that's fine. But yeah, I would have jammed because it would have driven out a bunch of draws. I mean, sure, someone could have a set with that many limpers in the pot. But, I mean, we won't fold out a big combo like ace king of clubs with a jack and a nine, something with a straight a flush draw and a wrap. We're not gonna get rid of that. But we will drive out a lot of other hands with a lot of other equity, including overpairs. Don't forget that it's possible someone could have kings or aces, and we don't want to let them catch a bigger two pair for free. We also, of course, don't want them catching some sort of straight. So yeah, I much rather would have seen if we just rewind back to the start of the hand. Um, right here on the flop, I would jam the whole stack in here instead. Anyway, let's move right along. Okay, and a question here from our player was did he make a bad play here? Let's have a look. On the button with a nice hand, and he jams it. No, I can't see a problem there. With 13 blinds, jamming with a suited ace big, a deuce and another wheel card. I mean, that's right in the hand ranges for jamming. I can't see a problem with this at all. Maybe his question, should he have raised smaller? No, I don't think so. The hand is so strong. I would jam here with even larger stacks all the way up to about 19 blinds. This hand has plenty of equity against the calling ranges at this stack size, so yeah, not a problem at all. And like I said, it's even in our hand range chart. So anyway, I'm not sure what the question was, unless it was to raise smaller. But no, raising smaller, I can't see the value in that because it leaves you with a weird, again, stack to pot size ratio post flop when called. I'm much prefer the jam. I think you've played it perfectly. Anyway, let's move right along. Here we go. It's the final hand that this player has asked us to review. Let's have a look. His question was, is this play against short stacks okay? So let's see what happens. Okay. Short stack on the button jams. And the other short stack comes in. We're in an interesting situation. Really, we've got to consider the hand ranges that our opponents could be playing here. This guy here on the button, he's pretty desperate. Almost any four cards, really. Any two low cards. This guy, he's probably going to be a bit stronger in order for him to come in the spot, but he's also desperate. So really, we're going to have to look at some equities to see what our situation is like. Now, as you can see here, I said the first guy, the guy on the button to enter the pot, just any two small cards will be enough for him. Now, for the second guy, the guy out of the small blind, I would put him on a slightly stronger range, but if we put him at the top of the range like an ace deuce, then we wouldn't actually have the necessary equity to call. We're only going to scoop just slightly less than 1/6 of the time. But if we add up the total scoops of our opponents, there's 124,000, that's out of 600,000 trials, this, and the 149. So, that adds up to us losing the pot outright nearly half the time if we give a strong range like this. Of course, this is sort of the worst case scenario. It's possible there could be weaker, that the second player coming in is just as desperate. Let's give him a slightly weaker range and see what that says. So now if we reduce the small blinds range to being any two wheel cards plus two other cards, then our equity stacking up okay. We've got more than the third equity that we should have. We're scooping a lot more often. And there's no necessary reason to think that both those players are any much stronger. Their stack sizes just dictate a bit of desperation on their part. So I'd be happy with the call here. What does our player do? He makes the call. And okay, we were right about this guy's range. And the guy in the small blind was right at the absolute top of his range. But anyway, like I said, I'm happy with that call. When we looked at those equities, we were likely to have the equity that we needed. Anyway, if you'd like to know a little bit more about what we do here at Teamo8, this is what we've just done now. Some hand reviews. One of our players has sent in and requested us to review. We do that for our players. If you'd like to know more, check us out on the website at teamo8.com. Thanks for listening and watching, and bye for now.